Hey everyone, welcome to another resin pour. This was actually a live pour that I did on Instagram. I edited it down for you to save you the chatter and get right to the point. I love these little bubble levelers. You can find one in my supplies list that will be linked in my description below. And I'm using Art Resin brand resin to do the seascape. First putting a clear coat down over my pre-prepped board, which I sealed in polyacrylic sealer and then painted with acrylic paints. I'll link to a video above if you'd like to learn more about how to seal your wood before you start resining on it. After I've used my hand to smooth the resin out, I get my little culinary torch out and pop some bubbles and heat the resin up so it's more fluid to work with. And then I start separating my resin into smaller cups that I'll mix my pigments into. That way the resin's not sitting in a big dense quantity, which would make it cure really fast. And then using my favorite white for making waves, Armor Art epoxy pigment, I put just very little into a small amount of resin. Make sure that you do 7 to 10% pigment to resin ratio, and perhaps even less if you're using acrylic paints, which I will in this pour. And then I have little bits of broken up shells from our travels to Florida. I always like to collect things when I'm out exploring on the beach or in the woods, and I'm putting that along my shoreline just to give it some texture and interest. Then starting with the Armor Art light blue, I start putting some down on my clear coat, and then I move on to my golden teal. And I just layer them next to each other so that when I get the heat gun out, I can blend them together. This is just my base coat and also just my first layer on this piece. And then I move on to my darkest color, which is that Artist's Loft acrylic mixed into resin. And I believe it was called turquoise, although I don't think it looks very turquoisey. And then I use my heat gun on a fairly high setting, starting with low speed, and then I kick it up to high speed and start blending my colors together. And then I'll move on and add in more colors and the white that you'll see in the waves. And now for that fabulous Armor Art white pigment paste. And I just stream it across my piece where I think I might want some white waves. And then I'll either torch it or I'll use my heat gun to move it around and manipulate it. And it will create some fabulous lacing and cells and really give it that wave look. What I'm doing here is I'm using my heat gun to kind of fold it into the other colors, in and under my other colors, so it appears as though the waves are under the water or on top of the surface. That's one of the other reasons I love to create layers, because then I can start building depth. Here you can see with just the right amount of pigment and some heat, you can create some really cool lacy wave effects. I'm going back in with some more of my bits of my shells, just because a lot of them got covered up when I moved my resin over them. Now I'm just putting some resin along the sides of my painting because I'm not sure if I'm going to frame this one. If you like what I'm doing, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, feel free to post them below. And as always, I really appreciate you stopping by, supporting my page, and following. Thanks guys, and happy creating!